Good morning and welcome to Thursday, April 10th edition of Daily Divas. This morning we are talking about grace. And it's not just a girl's name. Grace is something that is big in our lives that we may not pay much attention to. So one of the things, the verse for today is 2 Corinthians 12:9. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness." It reminds me of growing up at the church I grew up at. It was Bedford Methodist, so it was not your normal Methodist church. And uh, we would sing Jehovah Jireh, my provider. His grace is sufficient for me. And I think my brother sang it for years. Grace has gone fishing for me. So, um, it's one of those words that we want, but we overlook so many times. I can look back on my life and see many times that I have been given grace, but there's also times that in the midst of it, I didn't realize how much grace I was being given. Uh, I'll use my husband for an example. I'm one of those, what I call a stuff and suppress girl. So I take in and I take in and I take in and I just keep stuffing it down, stuffing it down, stuffing it down until Mount Vesuvius inside of me erupts. And then I go on these little tangents or rants. And I don't do it as much now as I used to do, but my husband would just very quietly, very peacefully walk around me, giving me what I needed in that moment, not cowering from me, but giving me my space to let it all out. When we were first early married, men are fix-it men, right? So I would have conversations with him about something going on in my life, and he's immediately trying to fix it. And all I was trying to do was process it. And so we began to have a conversation where it would start off with, "I just need to vent." That gave him permission not to have to put his fix-it hat on, not to have to rescue me, not to have to do any of that stuff, just to give me space to process. That's also called grace. So, um, I think a lot of times, I mean, I think a lot of times we think we have to apologize for not being the Wonder Womans, the moms, super moms, the super employer, super wife. We have to apologize, and we constantly lead with an apology for not being enough in that moment, right? I'm in a couple of different mastermind groups, and in those mastermind groups, um, we're in a Voxer channel. And through that Voxer channel, you'll hear people come on and say, "I apologize. I'm trying to get caught up." Because, I mean, when you got 10 to 13 women in a Voxer channel, you could have 20 messages and you just put your phone down for an hour, right? So people come on and they apologize for just trying to catch up. But we've said time and time and time again in that group, I think every one of us has said it, is there's no need to apologize. We understand. We know you're busy. We know life is crazy. There's no need to apologize. You are enough. There is grace for being present in your real life and not in the Voxer life, right? So I think one of the things that we realize with grace is we give a lot of it, but we don't receive a lot of it. So for me, when he says, "My grace is sufficient for you," that is him giving us grace. That is him giving us grace for the hard moments. It reminds me of old joke I heard years ago, and every time I hear the joke, it didn't happen at my church, but I remember my old church parking lot, and I envision my old pastor being in the parking lot and being in this place, and says a parishioner walks up to his pastor one day, and the pastor had just slammed his thumb in the car door, and the pastor is actually cussing. And the parishioner walks up to the pastor and goes, "Pastor, what's going on?" And the pastor goes, "Sometimes golly gee bum willikers just doesn't cut it." Well, that's where grace comes in. Grace is for everybody. Grace is not just for those you give it to, it's for you as well. So, how many times do you feel like you're falling short, whether at work, at home, in friendships, church, with your walk with God? I know I do on a regular basis. But I've been trying to be mindful to look at myself and go, okay, but where did I show up well? Because if I'm showing up well in other places, I've got to give myself grace over here, because I can't show up well 110% of the time in all places. I'm not omnipresent, only God is, right? So when I am unable to receive grace, when I'm unable to realize the grace that's been given to me, I really need to take a closer look and do a little bit of introspect and say, okay, God, showing me what work you're doing. Maybe if we took our time to look inward and say, okay, why am I beating myself up over this? And ask ourselves, should I be beating myself up for this? That might change a little bit of our dialogue. I think we talk so much hatred to ourselves and beat ourselves up far more than anybody outside of us knows, right? We we can put on a good game. We can talk outside. I used to be a cheer coach, so I do AWESOME. I'm awesome. I'm awesome. Awesome and me. And I would teach my girls that so that they would realize that they are awesome, right? They were busy. They were cheering on those football players, basketball players, whatever they were doing. They were doing all that stuff, but they needed to be cheered on as well. Well, we can put on a good outward show, but if our inner dialogue is something totally different, then we really need to make sure that we give ourselves some grace. Because if you find yourself having an inner dialogue of criticism, chances are you're not even allowing yourself to receive the grace that's entitled to you. And it's entitled because it's a gift he has made sufficient for us. It's not, when I say entitled, I'm not saying you're owed it in that sense. I'm saying he has provided enough for your provision of grace. All you have to do is receive it. And then realize that he is there for those moments when you feel like you're failing, when you feel like you're not enough, when you feel like there's one more person disappointed in me. God's right there with you. He's covering you. He's asking, okay, so my grace is sufficient for you, but are you ready to walk with me and figure out what my plan is for you? My grace is sufficient for you. Let's do this together. It's when we reach the bottom of our barrel. And trust me, I've seen a lot of people make their way to rock bottom, and they're like on a bungee cord right before they hit rock bottom. They get almost to the bottom, and then they bungee up, and then they get almost to the bottom, and then they bungee up, almost to the bottom, and they bungee up. They haven't hit rock bottom yet because they're toying with grace. But once they really realize grace, they won't even be toying with the rock bottom anymore. They'll be up here. But if they let go of that grace and they don't learn how to receive that grace, they could go crashing down into that rock bottom. And trust me, I've seen plenty of people hit rock bottom. It's not a pretty sight. So the challenge questions today, as we think about them, like we said, the verse is, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And that's 2 Corinthians 12:9. So the challenge questions are, where do you need to stop striving? Where do you need to stop striving and start receiving? Too many times we're making ourselves busy and we're not producing anything. And I'm not even talking about producing an income. I'm not talking about producing good humans. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. Too many times we're striving and we've forgotten to check the roadmap to see if we're on the right path, right? I know I've done it. And I know I've talked to several of you out there that have done it as well. But we keep striving for other people's acceptance, other people's attention, other people's money, other people's influence. What if we just started resting in who we are and who we were created to be in Christ and started receiving all that he has to offer, grace included? And then here's a big one I know for a lot of the women I talk to. We give out grace. We give out grace to our children. We give out grace to our boss. We give out grace to our employees. We give out grace to the moms in the carpool lanes. We give out grace to the cashier that can't count change back. We give out grace all day long. Now, are you ready to receive that grace? Are you ready to receive grace in the same measure, if not more, than you give it? And then what weakness is God trying to show you with his strength? There's so many examples I could give on this where I could lose my mind over being a failure one more time. When I was in the heat of my Hashimoto's struggle before I was diagnosed. I mean, I've said it before. From October till March, I just was almost an invalid. It was really every bit of energy it took for me to get out of the chair, out of bed, out of the house. I made an effort to go to the P.O. box every day for our business. But even then, even if I had a list of things I needed to do, I would talk my way out of having to go and do those things and make it all the way back home because it just exhausted me. And I was beating myself up. I was probably in the worst I had been in a long time, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I was struggling. And it was probably December of 2019. And I just said, I don't know what it's going to take, God, but I need a miracle. And I had an appointment the very next week. And that next week, I know what the precipice was. The precipice was, it was Christmas. And I actually hired someone to come and decorate my Christmas tree because I could not decorate my house for Christmas, and that is something I take great joy in. And I was devastated. And I went to that doctor's appointment, and they had done blood work a week before, and when I'm at that doctor's appointment, they tell me, "Well, we ran your thyroid antibodies, and we find that you have Hashimoto's." I didn't even know what Hashimoto's was. I'd been asking for years for my thyroid antibodies to be run, but this was a new doctor, and they had done what I had asked. And that one little test opened up the door for me to get treatment, to be able to get on a regimen that keeps me functioning, keeps me alert, keeps me present, keeps me in tune with my body, keeps me in tune with my life. And I honestly don't think God would have allowed that doctor's appointment to happen. I probably would have called sick out of that doctor's appointment because I was tired of people telling me there was nothing wrong. I probably would have canceled the doctor's appointment, something along that lines, if I hadn't have cried out to God in that moment and asked him to provide some healing for me. It was a moment of desperation. But here's the beautiful part. You don't even have to get to that moment of desperation. Be on the lookout for grace moments. Times that you are offered grace, times that you are given grace, and celebrate those grace moments today. I would love it if at some point today, this week, you got on the comments of this video and you shared some moment that you received grace. I would absolutely love that. Because those are the things that get other people looking for grace in their lives, looking for peace in their lives, looking for joy in their lives, looking for contentment in their lives. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Daily Divas. We've got another great day coming tomorrow. Tomorrow we are talking about peace. It kind of goes hand in hand with grace, right? Once you start receiving grace, you find peace. So we're going to keep going down this path of restoration and joy and peace and grace. So I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and you have a blessed day.